Hi everyone, welcome back. So today I wanted to talk with you a little bit about what I've been doing while I haven't been filming videos. I have been actually working on our garden. So it's been, I'm sure you've heard me talk about it, really hot here. And so this weekend was actually the first weekend where it was cool enough to actually be outside in the garden, at least for part of the day. I did get chased inside probably about 11 because I kid you not, I had, this is gross, sweated through all of my clothing and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I came back inside, changed, and just kind of hung out and ran some errands and then went back out when it cooled off a little bit, when it was tolerable again. So I wanted to show you kind of how I've been doing my garden planning. So this is my home planner, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before if you've watched any of my videos recently. So I'm coming back here to the gardening section, and so for the longest time this is what I've had in the gardening section. Pull this out. So essentially this is a list of all of the plants that I'm interested in planting in one way or another in our garden and kind of when they get planted. So I have an idea of what things I need to look at spring and fall, what I can plant in the heat of the summer, just so I have a basic idea of when I need to be looking at planting certain things. So I had made myself a note here as well of what else I wanted to track. So what we've planted, how it did we eat it? Because that's important. That's how I found out I don't like eggplant. How to preserve it, and then any notes. So normally we do pretty decent with squash and zucchini, but the years where we've been in a bigger drought situation, they haven't done as well. And also we have several beds, and I'll talk a little bit about garden rotation in a second. So noting which beds they do well in and which ones they don't. And I'll show you kind of why that is. So this is what I've had. That's all that's been in our section. So the rest of this I've actually been tracking on Google Docs and kind of putting it together there. And the reason I've been doing that is because I don't have stuff finalized, and that gives me an opportunity to change it. So just to start with, this is a somewhat rough layout of how our garden is. There we go. So this is on the side of our house, and these brown boxes are raised vegetable beds. So just for my sake of knowing where things are, we have a fig tree here in the corner of our property, and then in between these two raised beds and this existing, it's a raised bed, it's built in, it's kind of strange because there's like a little hill here, and so it's built into that hill. And we have grapes in the corner, blueberries and blackberries are kind of duking it out for we'll see who lasts. Anyway, and then in between that area we have an orange tree here and a lime tree there. I went ahead and numbered the beds just for ease of figuring it out, and to be honest, these are all actually roughly the same size. It's just kind of how things got laid out. I just wanted to note, which is why they're kind of different sizes, which ones were running this direction and which ones were running this direction, also to help me figure out what bed I'm talking about. So knowing how our garden is oriented, let's see if I can, they're going to overlap. So this is how I am keeping track of what's in which bed. So this is bed 1 here, and this year all we've had in it so far has been rosemary and grass. We've had weeds in it as well that we just pulled a bunch out. It did have herbs, it's had tomatoes in it. We're really horrible about using herbs in this side yard area. What I'd like to do, my husband is actually going to be building, I hope, a potting bench sort of an area that's also going to be tall enough to serve as a railing to keep people from falling off our back porch. It's very, you'd have to see it to understand what I'm talking about, but anyway. So it's going to have kind of a raised area on it up above where I'd like to put lettuce and herbs and things, because it's right off our kitchen, so I can just walk out there and cut herbs and lettuce, and I think I will get much more use out of anything that's there. It is full sun, full afternoon sun, so I think it should be fine. We do have a pergola, so if I need things more in the shade, I can kind of move them around a little bit. So anyway, that being said, right now all that's in bed 1 is rosemary. Bed 2, I actually planted a little late, a cherry tomato, some basil, dill, parsley, and Thai basil. It has been so hot, pretty much all of the herbs have already bolted, which means they've already flowered. It is what it is, it's fine. I'm not going to worry about it too much. In bed 3, I planted carrots. We had volunteer pumpkins. I don't think we planted anything pumpkin-y in this bed. They came up with a vengeance and took over everything. So I literally got 2 carrots and I just pulled them out. So the pumpkin is still going. We've gotten 3 giant pumpkins out of it, and it looks like we're going to be getting some more. So we're going to leave the pumpkin in, and I'll tell you what I'm going to plant on the other side there. So beds 4 and 5 have tomatoes. 4 has always been a really good tomato bed for us. I think it's just the location, lots of sun. Bed 5, anything that grows in there kind of has issues, and I think it's because somehow bed 5 got a crabgrass infestation. So what I spent most of my day doing yesterday in the evening was turning the soil in this bed and sifting out the crabgrass runners and roots and everything like that. So I'm hoping I got a lot of that out, so it may do better this year, and we're actually going to really amend that soil. So I'm hoping that bed will do better. 6 was yellow squash this summer, and it actually did pretty well. That one has a little bit of a weed infestation as well, but I think it is partially shaded during the morning time, so that may be why things are not doing as well there. Bed 7 was spaghetti squash and butternut squash. Things sprouted really well, but then they shot out runners out in all directions, I think looking for sun, because this one actually gets shaded quite a bit by that orange tree. And then bed 8 we have had a lot of issues with. We had beans in it a couple years ago. The beans just never really did all that well. And I think we really need to add some more soil because it is kind of low inside of the bed. And I actually hate weeding in this bed and reaching into it because it is so low. The spiders like the corners, and I'm not a big spider fan. So the zucchini actually has done really well. I think it may be because we left the beans in there for so long. We'll talk about crop rotation in a second. So the zucchini went bananas. Like, we get zucchinis, I kid you not, the size of my forearm. They are huge. Anyway, this is kind of how I'm keeping track of everything. So I have the plants going across, what bed number they're in, and then I started adding a type. So let me show you the crop rotation, and that will make a little more sense. So I put the website here that I got this information from, betterhensandgardens.com. So it's a blog. So essentially there's 4 types of plants: legume, which are pretty much beans and potatoes; roots, which are root vegetables; fruit, which is not just what you think of as fruit, but also things like tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplant, squash, anything that produces a flower and then a vegetable. And then you have leaf. So that is anything where you eat the leaves from it. So lettuce, greens, herbs, spinach, brassicas, which is like your cauliflower and your broccoli. It can also be your cabbage, Brussels sprouts, those sorts of things, and then corn. So corn's kind of a strange one, how it fits under leaf, but that's where they say it goes. So essentially, you just kind of pick where you start on this rotation. So leaf plants go where the legumes were. So if you have a legume, so let's say I planted beans, the next thing I want to plant there is leaf. It's because the legumes fix the nitrogen in the soil, and the leaf plants need large amounts of nitrogen. So legumes add nitrogen, which the leaf plants need. So then the fruits follow the leaves because they need the phosphorus, and they don't need as much nitrogen. So the leaf vegetables take up the nitrogen but leave the phosphorus, which is what the fruits need. So after that, the root vegetables follow the fruit vegetables because they need potassium and not as much nitrogen. So, and then again, the legumes follow the roots because they put the nitrogen back in the soil. So I'm trying to get us on this crop rotation. We have had a tendency to plant tomatoes in the same spot. Now we do amend the soil, but I'd like to kind of see if we can get a rotation going and maybe see if that will help things go a little bit better. So that is the whole idea behind the crop rotation. All right, so this is my plan for next year. So in with the rosemary, where we really haven't had anything. Now the rosemary has basically taken over probably a quarter of the bed. And we go after it with a hedge trimmer probably once a year just to kind of keep it contained because it would run rampant if it could. So because we haven't had anything there, I'm just going to put leaf vegetables in there. So the plan is to do Brussels sprouts and kale. Now, I found out Brussels sprouts actually can be grown in containers, so I may do that in the backyard, only because our Brussels sprouts tend to get, when we've had them in the past, tend to get attacked by aphids. And if they're where I can see them, and see them often, I can actually try and fight the aphids with like soapy water or something like that. So because the cherry tomato is not done yet, it's going to keep going for a little bit because it's still fairly new. We haven't had a first set of fruit from it yet. And the basil, dill, parsley, and Thai basil, I'm just going to leave it there. I will probably put in cauliflower. So essentially this has been a leaf bed already, and I'm just going to keep it with leaves, because before I think it was a fruiting vegetable anyway. In with the pumpkin, I'm going to put cucumbers. My husband has built large trellises out of wood and fencing materials. So the pumpkin has run rampant. We're joking that we're going to have to build a trellis over the street because it was headed for the street. The spaghetti squash and butternut squash were headed for the neighbors. It was pretty funny. They're taking over. So now that we have a trellis, I'm going to try cucumbers again because the cucumbers don't seem to do very well when they're growing along the ground. So now I have some place for those to go. So this has been a fruit bed, but because I'm leaving the pumpkin, I'm just going to keep it as a fruit bed for now. So bed 4, if you remember me talking, let me go back to bed 4. Bed 4 was tomatoes. So that was a fruiting vegetable. So because roots follow the fruits, I'm putting root vegetables in bed 4. So carrots, beets, and parsnips. And then in bed 5, which was also a tomato bed, I'm putting cabbage, radishes, and beets. So those will also be root vegetables. Bed 6, which was, again, fruiting vegetable, because that was the squash, I'm putting in leeks and turnips. And then I'm going to probably plant a couple more spaghetti and butternut squash plants in that bed. Again, continuing. It's been fruit. It's going to be a fruit again for another cycle, because they seem to be doing okay. And while I can plant spaghetti squash and butternut squash in the spring and get some over the summer, I think they tend to do better in our area during the winter. And then I'm just going to leave the zucchini in there. When the zucchini is done, I'm pulling it out, the bed's going to rest, and I'm just going to put more dirt in there and hopefully get it filled up to the top, because I want to get rid of the spider corners in that bed, because it weirds me out a little bit. So this is kind of how I am keeping track of our vegetables. I went ahead and put together another set of these sheets. So these 2 sheets actually represent an entire year's worth of planting. So I essentially am planting twice a year. So spring, summer, fall, winter. So I went ahead and created a spring, summer, fall, winter for next year as well, so I can tentatively start figuring out how to kind of work this whole crop rotation in. So trying to figure out where will my tomatoes go next year. So tomatoes will go probably into beds 1 and 2 because they need to follow the leaf plants. And then in bed 3, I don't remember what I was putting in bed 3 yet, but it was something that was a leaf plant. So I have these root plants here. So I'm planning on putting in some beans and peas. Now that we have these trellises, that's kind of been our downfall. I'd like to try those again and see if we can get beans and peas in and actually be out there and picking them, because that's our other issue. Sometimes you have to, for bean plants to continue to produce, you have to continue to pick the beans off the plants, and sometimes we get busy and forget. So hopefully we can keep that under control this next year. And then I don't remember what I was doing beds 7 and 8. It would be some sort of a root vegetable. I think if the beets work out well, I wasn't a big beet fan, but until we went to New Zealand, and then they do really well with beetroot and how they use them in with potatoes and things like that, and they were very good. So I'm going to try my hand at preparing them and see if we like beets. If we do, that's probably what's going to go in beds 7 and 8. So anyway, I hope for any of you who have a vegetable garden, or even if you don't and you dream and would like to do something someday, I hope that was kind of helpful. You can see how I'm doing my planning for next year and what all is going on, and my rough drawing of our backyard. Well, it's not even our backyard, it's our side yard, because the street's actually right here, and then as you go up this way we have some more fruit trees, and our house is like right here, and then we have a little front yard strip and a backyard area. So we are on 1/3 of an acre, in case you're curious. This seems like a fairly large area. It actually pretty much is. Most of these beds are 4x6 or 4x8. I think these are all 4x8. I think this one might be a short, these two might be 4x6. I think this one's a 4x6. So we're kind of one of those 2 sizes in this side area. Anyway, if you have any questions about gardening, what limited amount I know, please definitely leave them in the comments below. Worst case scenario, I can ask my husband. He grew up on a farm, and so I tend to help choose plants. I'm one of the designated weeders, but he's the one that sets up all the irrigation and makes sure it gets watered continuously. He keeps an eye on things. He's the one that amends the soil, and I get to cook it all. So just to give you an idea, we had those 2 beds of tomatoes. I think we had 8 tomato plants, and I canned 49 jars of tomatoes, and I'm giving tomatoes away at this point in time. Although I might keep our latest batch because I think I'm going to try making some tomato soup. We'll see. I will talk a little bit about my adventures in canning in a future video because I am wanting to can some new things aside from tomatoes. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye!